So the moderator for tonight is Michael Rubin. Michael is one of the gurus of the modern digital media. He's a filmmaker, an educator, an author of several books on digital editing, and a designer of digital editing machines himself. He worked at Lucasfilm, and he has a new book, which I think is going to be out this fall, is that right? Called Droidmaker, George Lucas and the Digital Revolution. I'm sure that's going to be a fun read. Everybody comes to him for advice. He's consulted for Sony and Apple. He's edited films and TV shows for Hollywood studios. He's also a multifaceted person because one of his activities is that he's CEO of Petroglyph Ceramic Lounge, which is a Bay Area retail chain where you can paint your own ceramics in a social atmosphere. That's a decidedly non-digital venture. Please welcome Michael Rubin.
Thank you. Yeah, you need to balance the tech with getting your hands messy, right?
I didn't know about the ceramics.
You didn't know that? It hasn't come up. Thanks for coming tonight. This is a very exciting panel. I'm certain you're all here because of the people who I'm speaking with tonight. Let me just begin by saying that over the past 2 years, I've been studying these guys as if they were an academic course and learning as much as I can about who they are and why they did what they did, and hopefully by the end of the evening you will have feel like you're friends with them, and you'll have some understanding of that as well. A lot of those stories are included in my book Droidmaker and many others, but these are unbelievably remarkable people. I guess it's obvious. In particular, sitting on my left, Ed Catmull, who Ed and Alvy were primary subjects of my book. For me, it's sort of like sitting with John Lennon and Paul McCartney. They can't say that, but I can say that about them. Over the... I don't know who's who. So much of what exists today in the field of computer graphics, much of it comes from work and passion that these two gentlemen had individually and together, working over many decades. Can you say that? Many decades? So I want to introduce Ed Catmull, who is today the president of Pixar Animation Studios, with a long, distinguished career doing exactly what he's doing now, pretty much, trying to make great films and, incidentally, using computers to do that. He's got a bio online, so I'm not going to read that to you, but I think I'll just begin by saying this is Ed Catmull. On his left is Alvy Ray Smith. These two guys go back to the early 1970s, where they found they shared a passion for computers and animation and putting pictures on a computer screen. If you've walked around the hall in here and you see the old computers, has everyone gone and taken a tour of the exhibits back there? Have you done that? Just remarkable that anyone could look at that and think, I wonder if we can make pictures with these things. Even in interviewing them and learning about what they did, it isn't the same as when you sit and look at core memory and you think how you could use that to make a picture or to tell a story. On Alvy's, and Alvy, of course, has also a long, distinguished career with many very cool graphical image startups and companies, and I'll let you can read about them here. So we'll talk about that in a moment. On Alvy's left is Andrew Stanton, fine director of films such as Finding Nemo. I won't go through his whole filmography. Andrew has been at Pixar Animation Studios for a long time and has sort of worked with these guys as the company evolved from practically a hardware company into the animation studio that it is today. And finally, at the end, Brad Bird, famous now as the director of The Incredibles and other classics. And hopefully you will get to experience what we've experienced over the past few days of just listening to us talk about the passions of animation. So I just want to start. This talk is about the human story of computer animation. It's not a technical story. It's not about the films themselves, unless you guys want to talk about the films themselves. What's interesting to me is just that you guys all know each other. This distinguished group of people have been working together in various capacities for a long time to do films like The Incredibles. And I think I want to go back to Ed and Alvy. We'll start with these guys. Ed, your college thesis, if I'm correct, was one of the first animated films. Is that right?
Yes. Michael, there's 2 chairs right up here, Michael, in the corner. Just give me some help.
He dovetails with a lot of jobs.
When I got to the University of Utah, the first class project I wanted to do was to animate my left hand. So I made a plaster of Paris mold of my left hand. I've since learned that if you ever do that, that you should put Vaseline or shave the back of your hand before doing this. They still haven't grown back. So the thing that was interesting about that class was that 2 of us did a fairly ambitious project. I did a hand, and Fred Park did his wife's face. And everybody else used some canned software they had in order to do the project. And we were the ones that stayed in the field, and the others just moved on and did other stuff. But that class project then was used in Future World. And Future World was the first film that had computer graphics in it.
That's a Michael Crichton film, for the sequel to Westworld. What did the hand do?
Well, it opened and closed, and this was the thing that caused people to gasp at that time, was that it turned over and the camera went inside the hand and looked around.
It reminds me of when the Lumiere brothers had done films and the train's coming at the audience and everyone jumps out of the way because they've never seen anything like that. People going into your hand.
It's almost hard to remember our perceptions when we first saw a lot of these things. Now things are so amazing that those crude things looked. I mean, they felt crude, but at the time they were jaw-dropping.
Is it true, Ed, that was one of the first movies shown in China?
I don't know that. I actually hadn't heard that.
In China?
Somebody told me once that after the thaw, that one of the first movies that went in was Future World that has Ed's hand in it.
That's
Actually,
nice.
I think that was Porky's.
It wasn't a hand.
They took it as a film on ideology.
So that was for a class project.
We have to
basically?
live with this with all the time.
That was a class project.
Right, it was a class project.
And your PhD thesis, which was also at Utah, what was that about? That also.
It was about displaying curved surfaces. And until that time, there was either quadrant surfaces, which were too limiting, or polygons. And so there was a progression to figure out how to make polygons and making them look smooth. And I started off with a way of actually smoothing the surfaces, but in the end came up with a way of displaying curved cubic patches directly.
And I think for those of you who aren't particularly technical, raise your hands if you consider yourself sort of on the non-technical side. Just want to see what we've got. Okay, these 2 guys, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you drew triangles on things, right? And you have objects were made up of sort of these triangles, polygons, right?
Right.
And so they have corners. Even a smooth object has corners. And it was a pretty big leap to try to make this actually a smooth surface and not just this geometric object, right? I mean, that's what you were working on?
Right, it was to take, it's like little pieces of curved rubber that you could then fold on things. So everything was perfectly smooth. And the trick was, how did you actually make a picture of that? Because the computer's got to calculate what is at each point and what its light is. Mm-hmm. So I came up with a way of doing that. But once I had these curved patches, since they were mathematically well defined, I could also put pictures on them and map them onto them. So that was the origin of texture mapping.
This is his PhD thesis. He invented texture mapping.
Come on, give it up for
Come
texture
on.
mapping.
Unfortunately, that's all I get for it. And the other thing was, in order to do the curve patches, I had to throw away the complicated algorithms and use the thing I call the Z buffer, which is now in all the chips and all the games.
That was another one of your sort of developments from that?
Right, and that's also something I didn't get anything for either. So.
No. Okay, I'll find that.
I view these as just stepping stones. The goal at that time was to get to the point where we could do a film. And so at that time, Jim Clark was interested in interactive displays, and his work at that time showed it.
What year was that, Ed?
This would have been I graduated in 74, so it was in the early 70s.
It's interesting, there's a lot of... it's interesting that we're sitting here on the week that Star Wars Episode 3 releases, Revenge of the Sith, the final episode of that, because a lot of people...
It took 10 minutes for him to bring that up. You were right.
Gotcha! I'm using all my power not to put the picture of the cover of the book up here, okay? George Lucas and his cronies, his friends, all graduated from a small number of classes from USC, and people talk about this golden class from USC in the late 60s. But there's another golden class, and it was University of Utah in the late 60s. And can you tell us who else was in your class back then?
Well, there was Jim Clark I mentioned. There was John Warnock,
founder of Adobe Systems.
Alan Kay was there.
You guys know these people? You've heard of these people?
So it was a good class.
It was a good class. So you were the underachiever in
Irving
your
Computer, class? He was there too.
Okay. So you graduated from Utah and you found yourself at New York Tech.
Right. There was a very wealthy man who had started animation, and he figured that if he could use computers, it would help. So he came out to Utah, ran into Dave Evans, and Dave Evans pointed him to me. So he brought me out to start computer graphics at New York Tech. And New York Tech, basically, it was a third or fourth rate school.
12th?
Or 12th. I was trying to be nice. But he was willing to fund it, and that was the attraction. And so once I got going, then we needed to have more people there, and it turns out that the first person that showed up was Alvy. And he was with David DeFrancesco, who is still with Pixar. And we had this 5-year run. It was amazing. We had more computer graphics equipment than the rest.
This is a couple years later, but there's Ed on the left and Alvy in the middle.
Oh, you have the No Jaggies
and
t-shirt.
And the No Jaggies t-shirt, yeah. Which was sort of their mantra back then.
That's probably a Lucasfilm, though, because...
it is. This is 1980. I skipped ahead
That's when we
briefly.
came up with that shirt, yeah.
You guys didn't have any pictures of yourselves at New York Tech, really to speak of.
I couldn't find them. They're lost.
It just recorded what Phil believes.
So Alvy, how did you end up at New York Tech? I mean, you showed up at his doorstep one winter day, but I mean, you came from a completely different side.
Yeah, I was at Xerox Park
Okay.
back in its wonderful heyday, working with a dear friend of mine, Dick Schaup. He had built the Super Paint, the first serious paint program, just down over in the museum, down to the museum here. I just went and had my picture made next to it. But Xerox decided that they were not going to do color. They announced to me one day, we're not going to do color, and they fired me, essentially. And I fought back hard. I said, you guys own, it's the color's the future, and you own it completely. You're making a big mistake. But they said it was a corporate decision, and that was it.
Those corporate decisions.
and now Park is famous for a lot of things, many of which are sitting in the hall behind us, like the mouse and networks and personal computer. But one of the things it's less widely known for is the frame buffer. So why don't you...
Okay, so Vic had built... I'm not going to say it's the first frame buffer because there was a large military presence in the United States at the time, and we suspect that the military had frame buffer. A frame buffer is a piece of memory that holds a picture and that you can see because it has a video readout.
So before the frame buffer, how did people see pictures on a computer?
Well,
Did they see pictures on
This
a
was the
computer?
most astonishing thing. Ed should tell it. I was astonished when he told me what they did at
Well,
Utah.
You either had a calligraphic display, which is where the lines are drawn around on the screen, and or what you did was you had basically a CRT, or like a flow television, and you had a bath in front of it and a camera behind it, and you took some seconds to minutes to scan out the frame, and then you took off the Polaroid, and you waited your 60 seconds, peeled it off, and you saw what the picture was.
So that's making a picture with a computer.
So all
That's
these,
how we-
so
all of our
that
research
work at
on-
Utah was done without
Polaroids.
seeing the pictures.
You're taking a Polaroid of a screen?
Right. Everything was done that way.
You wanted to make a movie. Like you're
No, well, to make
First
a movie,
Polaroid movie.
we would put a movie camera on it, and when we would just expose them a frame at a time. And that's how we made all of our pictures. If you wanted color, then you had the color wheel and so forth. And they were starting to build the first random access frame buffer just as I was leaving
at Utah?
at Utah.
And we had heard about this. So when we, being David DeFrancisco and I, we had heard about this. And when I got fired, David wasn't hired at Xerox, but when I got fired, we were a team. We'd already cast our lots together with the National Endowment for the Arts. So we heard they were the next frame buffer, meaning 8 bits. That was the minimum.
An 8-bit
bits was
frame
required.
buffer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had to have 8 bits.
It's very exciting.
Was being built at Utah. So we got in my car and we drove over to Utah to find our way.
So you guys this is early 70s. You're hippies, right?
Yeah.
Can I say that?
I had totally, hair down to about here, and David had hair out to about there.
So you're cleaned up by this picture, right?
Oh, well, yeah, a little bit.
That was after a few years of rehab at that point.
Okay.
My hair's about the same.
In fact, you look exactly the same.
And we got to Utah, these 2 freaky-looking guys, and our goal was to get somehow access to this frame buffer that was being built so we could make this new kind of art.
Dude, where's the 8-bit?
And they said, they took a look at us and said, we're Department of Defense funded, and but, and here's the big but. There was this rich man who just came through recently from Long Island, New York, and bought one of everything in sight. And I said, including the frame buffer, and he says, yep.
And this is Martin Newell who said this to you, correct?
I believe it was.
I think that's who we've decided it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Martin Newell is
Yeah.
famous for the teapot. You may have seen, there's also his teapot here.
Yeah.
So he sent these guys to...
And Martin called me and said, I'm sending 2 hippies out.
So what Martin said, and he loves animation, so you can talk art to this guy. And I'm going out tomorrow, I think, or very shortly, to consult with, turns out to be Ed. And I'll call you as soon as I get back and tell you what I saw.
So you didn't want to... Were you hoping to make movies or just beautiful
We wanted
pictures?
to make art. We wanted to make art. We had David and I had submitted a proposal to the National Endowment for the Arts consisting of a videotape made on Dick Schaup's Super Paint system showing that you can make art with this new medium called digital art, raster graphic art. And we knew it was the future, and we wanted a grant to pursue art on that new medium. So we had to go to the frame buffer. We had to go to the next frame buffer, which happened to be at New York Tech, or it would be shortly.
So that's where you guys all ended up, right?
Yeah. So I walked in that door, and there was 2 guys in the room, Malcolm Blanchard and Ed Catmull, and I think I addressed Malcolm as Ed, but worked it out fast. And that's how it started.
So this is a garage behind a mansion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's our joke is we started in a garage, but it was a 4-car garage.
4-car garage.
We were in the servants' quarters on the top, and the bottom where the cars were was actually where the computer room ended up being.
And all of your tech, I mean, you have to picture it. This is a part of Long Island which looks like it's something out of The Great Gatsby. I mean, these are gorgeous mansions on estates, and the guy who brought these people, together, who bought this almost $1 million worth of equipment and just shopping at University of Utah, was somewhat eccentric. He really believed that creating an animation department at this college that he was putting together would create a legacy that would last long into the future. And the students would get to make movies, and the movies would make money, and the money would support the university. This was his dream. And they said he wanted to out-Disney Disney. And technology would help him leap ahead. And these are the guys. Okay.
We walked right into that.
He walked right into that. So what did you convince him to buy?
Well, actually, he before he hired me, he'd already acquired one of everything. He didn't know what it was, though.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked him what he bought. He said he didn't know. He said he's got one of everything. So
It was Walt Disney's Frozen Body.
So one of them was the frame buffer, which cost $80,000.
8-bit frame buffer.
8-bit frame buffer.
This is $1975. $4.
And it was the second one built by them. The first one was still at the University of Utah. We have an ENS picture system.
Which is a vector system.
Right. So with that, I then started to write a 2D animation program, which I called Tween. And I wrote the version 1 in PDP-11 assembly language. And
A groan.
PD7. There's a good story there. Ed and I both knew Fortran, but we both
Sounds like
despised
French
it.
to me, blah, 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 blah.
see, I would pick assembly language over Fortran.
And we agreed on that was one of our first major agreements.
So,
Good. The basis of a great relationship.
so after that, we thought, well, we're going to go to the next version here, but so we decided to try this new thing, and so I called up, what's his name?
At
Bell Labs.
Richie.
Which was the other one?
Richie and Thompson?
Yeah, one of those guys. I talked to one of them, I forgot which one, because we had to pick between Unix, which really wasn't out yet, except there at the labs, and DEX operating system. And so he talked me into going with Unix, and so we brought in Unix. And so basically, our heritage with Unix goes back a really long ways. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote Tween over again. Actually, I changed the name, but people liked Tween so much I had to change it back to being Tween. But that was a 2D animation system. I even did something in 2D.
Well, let me pause for a second. Next door to where these guys are sitting with all the computers at New York Tech, this guy, Alexander Schur, has got a building full of animators doing traditional animation of their first full-length feature film. It was called Tubby the Tuba. And they were drawing it, and the sort of, if I understand correctly, please stop me, but the assignment was, if you can help, maybe we can make this, use the computer somehow.
Make Tubby dance.
Make Tubby dance, was that the assignment?
So they send over artwork as we're putting the systems together, but it took a while to figure this out. They were trying to destroy the project because we represent a threat to their work. So they would give it to us, and then they'd call up one day later and say, is it done yet? We have to have it. So they send all the material back the next day. So we actually never had anything of ours go into Tubby the Tuba. Thank goodness.
Anything that starts with an alliteration is a bad idea.
So something else came out of New York Tech, which is of particular importance to anyone who's doing computer graphics. These guys convinced Alexander Schur that he needed more than one of these $80,000 frame buffers, and he got them to get 3 $80,000, and eventually
5 more.
Eventually 5. And
So the order was 5,000, 5 of them at $60,000 apiece. So that would the other would give us a total of 6. So that was when they showed up, we got all 6.
So that means the first, and you could gang 3 of these together to make RGB, right?
well, this was
So
you could,
the first
that was
one
a good
was
idea,
First one was $80,000. The next 2 parts of the RGB frame buffer were 60. So that's $200,000, $5.
So you had the
Which if
first
you-
RGB frame buffer.
If you calculate out to now, it's about $2 million.
You
one
couldn't
or two
even
million
make
bucks.
Tubby dance.
They've been trying for 20 years to make Tubby dance.
So that was basically a graphics card. It cost $1 million.
Well, you did something that was beyond that. You made an RGB frame buffer, but you came up with this idea that if you added another frame buffer to the pile, you could do something else. What were you doing?
Well, it was, and actually, yeah, it was, the notion was that there's a missing component, and that is transparency.
Transparency.
So drawing up on the board, we designed it to handle transparency, which we just put the alpha letter up there to represent that channel, and so it became known as the alpha channel.
So these guys invented the alpha channel. So we got texture mapping. If you're following along on your little checklist, we got bicubic curved surfaces. We have texture mapping. Now we have an alpha channel.
It's P76 or something like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, these things are totally fundamental in all computer graphics today. And the idea of not having them and having to invent them so you can make a movie, I don't know, it's remarkable.
But you know, the thing was, we knew at the time that while we had all this funding and we had this support, that we were not on a path to making films, because that was missing. The unfortunate thing at the time was that Alex would say to the artists, someday you guys aren't going to have a job because these guys are going to replace you. And we knew that wasn't true. And which meant that he was relying on us to do something that we didn't know about. And it's one of the reasons why when George Lucas called, that it only took about 1 or 2 nanoseconds to decide what to do.
So George Lucas called in 1979 because, as I understand it, they were having a dog of a time doing what's called optical compositing. They were the opening shot of Star Wars in 1977. I don't know if you remember it. There's a little ship flying along. It took them 8 months to put that one shot together, and they really weren't having a good time. It was described as sumo wrestling, and they were getting thrown out of the match a lot. And so one of the things they really wanted to have, and they had dangled in front of them, was this idea of using a computer somehow to optically composite, maybe make a digital optical printer. And that was reason enough to bring in these guys to see if they could help. And very quickly, Ed was asked to come up with some other things, ways that a computer could change filmmaking. And Ed was in charge of the computer division at Lucasfilm, and Alvy was in charge of the graphics project, which today eventually evolved into Pixar. Got all that right?
Pretty
So we're up to Lucasfilm. So that's where this picture is taken as they got there. And while you weren't there to do films, were you? You were there to do something else.
Silly us, we thought that was the reason, but it wasn't literally the reason.
So what were you doing there?
We were building these. George's vision was that it was time to modernize the technology of movie making. In particular, to digitize, to use the computer to modernize optical printing, you've already mentioned, audio synthesis and editing, and video editing.
But you guys were into animation. I mean, was it a secret passion?
We just somehow assumed, and now to look back at it, I'm not sure why, but we just assumed that he understood what we were and did, and that he would sooner or later, of course we could build the machines for him, but the real goal was to help him make his movies using computer graphics.
Here's one of those things you did. This is pretty early there. Is that correct? Road to Point Reyes?
I don't remember the date.
Because this has been described as a one-frame movie.
No, it's just that the credits were the length of the credits for a movie.
That's why it's called a one-frame movie, because the credits are as long as a movie.
What's special about this picture, and what does it represent?
Oh, everything's special. Okay, it has fractals in it. Lauren Carpenter owned fractals, did the mountains in the background, and this over at the left. I think, wasn't it Lauren that did the rainbow also? He had read an article on how rainbows work, so he wrote a program that did optically correct rainbow. And there's some fancy texture mapping for the asphalt. I think, I can't remember, Bill Reeves or somebody did that. I did the plants. They're fractal plants, raptals I called them.
So this was a huge group effort.
Oh yeah, Rob.
Applying everything you guys knew how to do. that right?
There were really a lot of people involved. Yeah. The
Okay.
reflections off the water. I mean, this is, and it looks like Marin County, kind of. Oh, well, that was what the T-shirt was about, that you saw in the preceding photograph. When Ed and I got to Lucasfilm, we had to write everything from scratch, and we just made it a law that nobody would write an algorithm that didn't consider how to anti-alias as they were writing it, because that's one of the things you can't do after the fact. And we started out with this logo and wore it to SIGGRAPH to kind of announce that was our peg in the ground. So we never made anything aliased.
So all this work you're doing, you're still building towards trying to make something animate, right? I mean, you want to make a movie. I mean, you're thinking about making a movie, aren't you?
Well, the idea is to make a movie, but we recognize that there's one major flaw, and it has to do with motion blur. One of the things that made Star Wars work was that when they shot their models moving in front of a blue screen, they had the models moving while they shot them, so they actually captured the blur. And it was very difficult to hold that blurred edge, that basically it's the alpha channels falling off, as they go through this optical process. That's one of the reasons it was hard. But the result of doing that is that you're emulating what happens with live-action film. And the problem is, it's a thing that most people aren't really aware of, but when you're going to the movies, you're typically, when you're seeing a film movie, you're seeing every frame shot twice on the screen. And the result is, since your eye is tracking something across the screen, a sharp edge will show up in two different places on the back of your eyeball, because your eyeball is moving and the image isn't. And with live action, because you've got blur in the direction of motion, you don't have a sharp edge for your brain to key on. So it was important to have the motion blur in there so that it would look natural, and you don't have this weird strobing effect. And I'd started research on this back at New York Tech, but as we came to Lucasfilm, it was clear that for a renderer, we needed to solve the problem of motion blur before we could ever use our images in motion pictures.
And you did.
Yeah, we were working on a renderer. A guy named Rodney Stock came up with an idea for dithering, and then some more research was done by Rob Cook in how to use that for anti-aliasing. And then Tom Porter had the notion of spreading these out over time. And in order to test out the idea, he made a one-off picture, which was called 1984. So this is one of those times we do know the year in which he made the picture.
The cue balls have the numbers. I don't know if you picked up on that. So what you see here is bringing to bear everything that they knew at that time. And very quickly, once they solved the motion blur thing, they wanted to try it in an animation project. And I have a frame from that. This was the first film. It was really done by sort of the proto Pixar team. Who joined? Someone joined your team at this point. You want to?
Well, this is the first John Lasseter animation after he joined us at Lucasfilm. We had met him at Ed and I had met him at Disney.
Do you guys know who John Lasseter is? Okay. He's the missing director, I suppose, among you two. If John was here, it would be the
John. We hit it all with John. He took us down into the archives at Disney, and he said, "Well, what do you want to see?" And I said, "I was a Preston Blair fan." I said, "I want to see the dancing hippos, Fantasia." And he went, "Oh, okay." And he goes over and looks on a chart, and walks over and pulls out an envelope, and there are the original drawings. And he's flipping through, and so we did that for a while. It was great fun. The drunk elephant scene from Dumbo. So. Like that. And then he was no longer at Disney, ran into Ed at the Queen Mary at a convention, and Ed and I were chatting, and I suggested that perhaps we should hire him, and Ed immediately
He was fired from Disney, actually, because of corporate decisions. But then, Brad was also fired from Disney.
Brad and John went to school together at Cal Arts in college. Were you guys at Disney together at the same time?
No, I was fired right when John was coming in.
No.
A great tradition. So did you guys see this film when this was done? Did you have?
I saw it at Lucasfilm, yeah.
Were you hanging around?
I was in
He used to
Moran
hang
around
around
that time.
but way back then.
Yeah, I was trying to get a film off the ground that didn't work. But
You just show up and see if they would.
well, I
hire
was
you?
talking with these guys about. We were trying to get another film project off the ground based on Will Eisner's The Spirit, it was just so outside the box of what anybody was doing at that time. We were told that no animated film would make more than $50 million, and that only Disney would even get close to that. So we were neither of those things, you know. So but I was trying to, my partner at the time, Jerry Reese, had worked on Tron, and he came up right after. Oh, come on, Tron has its place. Don't hiss, Tron.
Yeah.
But anyway, he came up going, seeing the future, and he started talking to me about all the stuff that the computer could do and all the stuff that meant might be possible in the future. And we were trying to get it as a way to integrate into hand-drawn animation.
How would you use it with hand drawn?
Well, mainly, we were sitting there, we worked on this film at Disney, and we wanted to see the multiplane, which is an old camera process that all those fantastic shots that everybody loves from the old
It's like
film.
a 4-story building, a multiplane camera.
Yeah, and it was all hand done. I mean, it was guys were cranking this, and there was one guy from MIT doing the calculations, and it was just rotating each level separately. But the effect was amazing, and we kept saying, why don't they use the multiplane anymore? And we had this shot that we wanted to do in Fox and the Hound, and we said, come on, this would be a great multiplane shot. Let's show them that we can still do that stuff. And so they did some calculations, came back, it was like $150,000 or $200,000 for this shot. And we were just, sorry guys, it's impossible. And then we realized the calculations were based on paying 4 union guys to do it like it's 1940. That if they hooked up like a single computer to this and just put servos to it, it would be very reasonable and it would be amazing. But anyway, that was neither here nor there. These guys were at the forefront. Jerry saw, because of his experience on Tron, that computers were going to be capable of doing a lot of things. So we were trying to get hand-colored inks back into animation. We were trying to get multiplane shots that were far more complicated than anything that they were able to do on the multiplane. But, we were kind of trying to do old-style animation with new-style technology.
So old style, do you mean 2D animation?
Yeah, hand-drawn animation that's basically on steroids, as you would say.
And you guys are doing 3D animation?
Yeah, we did both.
They were
Both.
Okay.
yeah, way ahead of us.
I mean, it's art, right? It's not about reality. It's about art. And
Well, that's a leap. That's a leap. A lot of, when you start out and you were doing these computer things on the computer, a lot of people were talking about trying to make a real-looking image. And at some point, someone had to make a leap that it's like, no, it's not about real-looking images.
Well, throughout this time, we used reality as a benchmark. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, it's an industry-wide benchmark. The trick was not to get fooled by your benchmark. And a lot did that. They thought it was about reality, and when you finally got things that started to look real.
You're talking in the past tense, dude. It's still around today.
Yeah. It's true. It
In
is
fact,
true.
Andrew dealt with, when I first came up to Pixar, Andrew was dealing with that on Nemo. Mm-hmm. The very first thing that I saw on Nemo was they had a bunch of tests, and they said they had shots from all the real shots of underwater shots. They had a shot of a whale. They had a shot of, a reef, water surface. They had like 4 different shots. And they said the goal is to recreate these shots and match them totally using the computer. And so they went off for like 2 months, what was it? And they came back, and the shots looked unbelievably like the real shots, to the point where 9 out of 10 people probably couldn't tell which one was computer and which one was real. And the thing is the first thing they said when they saw that was, ugh.
It's too real.
Yeah.
They said people won't believe we did it.
Not only that,
And I said, look, nobody's going to buy fish with eyes talking in the real ocean. You need to go back into hyperreality, which is what we always call it, so that we keep it clear from the word photorealism.
right.
Because in my mind, that's the world I want to see. I can go outside anytime and see the real world.
Yeah.
I want to see what's in here that I've been thinking about since I was 2. And that's the world I want to make.
Well, and that's, again, goes back to what Ed is saying, it's about art. If you ask the average Joe, well, you saw Bambi, what was it like? They'll go, man, it was so realistic, every leaf was drawn. If you actually go and look at the film, there is the most vague impression of the backgrounds. It's almost like Asian art or something like that. There is very little detail. But it is so evocative of what it feels like to be, what it feels, underline, italicized, bold, like to be in the forest, that it feels real when you think back on it. And what these guys, John Lasseter was very smart, because he said one of the first things that he wanted to do was insist that everybody get certified to dive on Nemo. So they all got certified. I'm sitting here, I don't get to do any cool stuff with my superhero movie. I'm just, I put on a cape and run around the living room? These guys get to go to Hawaii, as a business expense and go scuba diving. But the cool thing is they all went scuba diving. They all had the experience of being way down below, seeing these fish up close, and they came back with their feelings about what it felt like.
You want to know you wanted to share the experience of what your senses are like when you're underwater. That reminds me of this great story that John tells me when I first came to Pixar. How I think it was working on Andre and Wally B. How he was trying to choose the color palette for the film, and he wanted the mountains to be purple. And I remember, I don't know if it was you or Bill Reeves or both saying, "Mountains aren't purple."
No, it was Rob Cook.
Rob Cook says, "Mountains aren't purple." And John goes, "Come here!" And he brings him outside, and he points him out to the mountain range. And he goes, "What color is that?" And then he isolated it, sort of, to look at. And sure enough, it was like it wasn't purple, but it wasn't any of the colors anybody else was saying either. It was some sort of magenta or off blue. And he says, your eye, because of atmosphere and everything, you're actually seeing all these colors you would never think of.
He also dragged you guys to see a Maxwell Parrish exhibit. Yeah.
And so it was a real eye-opener for a lot of the guys that had been taking things too literally.
Well, I think
even with the best of intentions.
Lasseter did a lot. Early on when they first started working with John, and you brought him up from Disney, one of the things that he had said that he was doing was trying to communicate how to do these sort of non-real things that they were. And in Andre and Wally B, in fact, the way that they were modeling, they had to invent, of course, the tools. There were not really tools for modeling and animation at the time. This is one of the screens of how they were building Andre sitting there. But if I recall correctly, you could only do geometric transformations, like make things larger and smaller and slide them around. And he wanted to, he described stuff as like a water balloon or something, and
stretch and squash.
Yeah, I did a foot thing so that it was this flexible, weird shape.
Yeah, and you had to invent new objects, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of technology behind what you do. Do you guys think that you've gone past? Pixar continues to make hit after hit, and you have these great technologists there, and yet you guys don't really know anything about technology, do you?
No, I'm a testament that you don't have to know squat about the computer, and you can make it at Pixar. So, and I consider I talked to Brad about this. I consider it an asset that I don't know anything about the computer.
But I propose that you respect people who do.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a distinction. Well, I've been in places where people hate the other side, and it doesn't work.
There's a point where I don't want to know too much, because then I'm not of help to the process. There's a certain amount of healthy ignorance
Do you guys just you just come up with a story and you say, this has to happen, and then a bunch of guys disappear and say, we're going to try to make that happen?
I came on in 90 just after the last of the short films were done, Knick-Knack, and we were just starting to do commercials. And the thing that impressed me that I saw happen on all the commercials and has happened to this day when we talk about film projects, it's pretty much always been this pattern, is that we'll think of something really, really cool, and we'll go, oh my God, what if we've never seen this, what if you did this? And the guys that actually have to do this will go, you can't do that. You go, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool? And then we would ignore all the limitations and just go do it. And matter of fact, I don't think there's very many commercials I can remember going into the first 2 years where we had no idea how the hell we were going to do it after we had accepted the job and promised when we would complete it. And I loved that. I loved that about the place.
It's completely irresponsible.
But it drove the technology. We never, almost every single one of our technological advances was based on a creative commitment we had already made. And it's this weird thing that's kind of come out in the press with our movies, like, what's the next thing you're going to tackle? Water, fur, humans? It's like we think of that ahead of time, but to be honest, whenever we finish our movie, they go, the press are going to ask us what's something that we've come up with. Well, let's pick something. Fur. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about fur. and that's the God honest truth. I mean, we don't think about those things. We just go, what's the content?
Do you think that is that unique among animation studios?
It was at the time that I came on. I really
Now it's getting to be a drag, man. It's getting to be a drag to talk to the press. It's like, so what new things do you have this time? And it's like
it's mandatory.
Yeah, it's like rich Corinthian leather. I don't know. And like if you talk about, hey, we got a great story and really cool characters that you care about. Yeah. But do you have stuff? Is there blue fur or something? Come on, give me something. And it's like, it's so beside the point. I mean, it's cool, but it's not the film. Well, nose hair. I have nose hair.
The first computer-generated nose hair.
Yeah.
Ed? You have anything to say about that? I mean, the technology...
Well, actually, but it is an interesting phenomenon that so many people do focus on the wrong things. And as I say, throughout this history, people were thinking about the reality, or they're thinking about the technology. And I think one of the things that worked for us is that was never the goal. We wanted to use it. We wanted to have it. We did want to develop the technology, but the goal was not technology. The goal was to be able to tell stories. And I know when I started, I didn't think I had the ability to draw. So this was, sublimation for that, I guess.
It's a prosthetic for you.
Right. But, it's turned into this wonderful and great adventure. But it was never about the technology. And now when you actually get there, then people want to talk about the technology. When Toy Story first came out, I have to say this, one of the things that we really wanted to happen was that it not be about the technology. And one of the things I was most proud about was when I read the reviews, almost every review only had one line about it being computer animation. And the rest of the review was about this remarkable idea of what it was like to be in the world of these toys. And that was a huge success. And if they had focused on the technology, we would have failed.
Toy Story really holds up. I mean, it's 10 years ago.
The fascinating thing is, up until the day it was released, all anybody would ever say when said what we were doing, whether it was the average Joe on the street or whether it was the press, or they'd say, will somebody sit through 70 minutes of computer graphics? That was like all anybody thought was the hurdle.
Which is hilarious because it's exactly what they said to Disney in 1937.
Yeah.
Will people sit through 70 or 80 minutes of animation?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's about the story.
What's hard to sit through is 2 hours of Alexander.
Yeah. It sure is. I couldn't. I was just thinking, this is probably the last piece we did, the Andre and Wally Bee, where it wasn't about the story. We were showing off particle systems and motion blur and real character animation by a real animator, and I remember listing things off like that. But then the next piece was Luxo Jr., and that's when it became the story.
Story. We have Luxo Jr. here. You guys may have seen it out back, but why don't we take a break and take a look? The thing that's amazing about Luxo Jr., made by a lot of these guys here, this is the graphics group right after Luxo showed at SIGGRAPH. I'm pretty sure you recognize some of these guys here. Was that it was in 1986, and people watched this computer-generated film, and it was one of the first times that people were watching something computer-generated and instantly forgot that's what they were watching. They were caught up in the character, and I think that's, again, true of Toy Story and all these films. That it just doesn't matter how they were done. You guys okay showing Luxo? You want to take?
Yeah, the number one question at SIGGRAPH after they saw this was the big lamp the father or the mother?
I didn't notice any genitalia on it.
That time basically till now, through Toy Story, and it's remarkable to me that they were so passionate about telling stories, using the computer as a tool, such that they made it so the computer is completely transparent, completely irrelevant to the story. You guys have anything else you want to add? I thought we'd let the audience ask you guys some questions.
Well, I was just going to add that, I'm a fairly new. I just started into computer animation fairly recently, and a lot of the things that people focus on with computer animation is the same as when you do hand-drawn animation. I mean, everybody goes, if you laid every drawing end to end, it would go to Mars and back 5 times. Or something. It's such a boring way to talk about animation, as if you're just sitting there counting drawings. And it's like counting the number of notes in a symphony. It's so irrelevant to, you can have 25 notes that you remember perfectly, and you can have a billion notes that don't add up to anything. It doesn't, there are great films that have very limited animation, and there are lousy films with full animation and reverse. It's all about what's in the drawings and what's in the program, and it's about, emotion and all those things, and, art, as you said, and to a very light smattering applause. It's usually like 3 people in the back. Art. Yeah, art!
I was going to ask what you thought maybe the next 10 years might be like in animation, but it's really irrelevant. It's just more films, right?
What it's going to be like in the near future is a lot of Pixar wannabes are going to come out with horrible films.
We had to. I remember this conversation really well.
And some good ones.
Near the first year or two of developing Toy Story, when we were trying to map this all out with our naivete and ignorance, we said, listen, we can either spend all our efforts and try to make it the most amazing looking film, and if history is anything to follow, it's going to look ugly no matter what we do very quickly. So let's put all our efforts towards making it the best story possible, because we said, come on, what movies hold up that the strings show and you still want to watch them? And we listed Snow White, Wizard of Oz, and Star Wars. And we said, that's good company to be in. And so we put all of our eggs into that basket. And in a weird way, since that's always been our focus since '92, I consider that the big jump on everybody else, is that we put that much investment into the story, into the content.
At the same time, people still don't get it. It's like everyone tried to do hand-drawn, feature animation after Lion King hit. So all these big media companies went in with hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, made a bunch of terrible films, and then went running. And now, it's because a few computer films have hit, and most significantly because somebody besides Disney has succeeded. In CG animation, it's DreamWorks and Blue Sky. A few people have succeeded. That's made everybody suddenly think that, all those lousy ideas that got rejected, if we put them through a computer, they'll be made good. Yeah. We can make a lot of money. So they're that. And 3 years from now, it's going to be again. And, it's the story, it's the characters, and nobody wants to hear that because it's not sexy.
Yeah.
But if they think that if I buy the Megaplop 9000, all my ideas will be gold, then, well, anyways.
Well, don't get
It's like that old Smothers Brothers song they had. You can tell by my outfit that I am a cowboy. If you buy an outfit, you can be a cowboy too. we were fortunate in that, and because we talked about this early on, is how do you build a group of people that works well together? And one of the keys is you have to bring in people who are smarter than you are and people who do things that you don't do and have the confidence to do that.
Fortunately, that theory ended right before I got employed.
Well, the first person that John hired was Andrew. And Andrew has basically... Mistake number one. Andrew has written all of our screenplays up until Brad's film. And so there was this... So basically, there was this group of people that it took some time to assemble, and include Joe Ranft and Lee Unkrich, and just a remarkable group that Andrew refers to as like the Beatles.
Yeah, it was not so much that we thought of ourselves like that, but we just thought of, everybody gets when you say the Beatles that there was this chemistry with these particular individuals. It wasn't something you could replicate. You're only going to get it with those names. And that's what we started to understand was happening by having a group of us together. Something happened in the room that when we were apart did not happen.
And it's very remarkable because you find a group that really does something amazing together. And the truth is that, I mean, people focus a lot on John, and it's even embarrassing for John in the sense that John knows it's a group of people that did it. But the outside world needs a simple story. When they write their magazine articles, they want the identifiable person on there. And so what it does is it takes one person and separates them out. But the fact is, it's a group that's worked incredibly well together. And the challenge has been, as you go forward, is how do you bring in people who work at that level? And it actually is the bottleneck. And the technology and the production crews aren't the bottleneck. It's actually finding the magic of a group that works well together. And unfortunately, most people copy the wrong things. They think that it's the computer that's doing it. And that isn't where the magic comes from. Now, I say that I have strong feelings about this, but it's complicated because it doesn't mean I'm dissing the technology, because obviously we love it and we use it a lot.
And we want to push it farther.
Yeah.
And we do want to push it. If you actually think about the early days of Disney, because we now think of that as almost like a pre-technology era, but the fact is they had just invented cameras and animation. This was a brand new technology. And the new technology created an environment in which the artist could create something new. So the technology was part of this exciting infrastructure in which you could do things. And so now we think of that as old, but it was actually a technological innovation that made it take place. Now we've got computers, and it's just doing the same thing again. It's a new base in which people with artistic abilities are able to do something and create. And it wouldn't happen in the same if you didn't have the technology, so we don't diss it. But at the same time, it's not the art. It's just part of this rich environment.
And as, you know, I think you were saying, you know, Toy Story is like ancient history now in terms of computer development. But if you sit down and watch it, within 30 seconds, you are sucked into that world, and all that stuff that came after, it doesn't matter that it's missing because you care about the characters, and you still do. And if you put that film on, I mean, my guys hadn't looked at it in years, and they put it on the other night, and they were quoting lines. Suddenly it was like it was a brand new film. I mean, I was hearing lines from Toy Story in the car, and "You're a sad, strange little man, Dad." And you know,
I put it on for the first time in about 6 years yesterday, and I'm sitting there going, damn, we're good.
I think you succeeded in putting your film up in that group with, you know, Star Wars and, you know, as you named that.
There was such a palpable passion to make that film. I think every film since then has just been an exercise in trying to recreate that passion. We had such a desire, and it had, you know, for as much as it was built on the house of we want to make the first CG movie, the guys that were really, I was there in the room every day. It was driven by something much larger, which was
Fear.
well, yeah. No, that's not funny. That's true. But beyond the fear, when you dug deeper, was we were so frustrated with the animation we had been seeing in the last 10 years. We hated it.
Yeah.
And we said, come on, how come it's now become law? You got to remember, this is 1990, 91, that if you make an animated movie, that means you have to have songs. It has to be a fairy tale. It has to have our little town. It has to have a villain. It has to have this is the What I Want song.
And the villain song.
And the villain song.
And the love song
we made this
surprised
list.
over the end titles with Peebo Bryson.
We made this list, and we said, and you said it better. You said, animation is not a genre. It's just a medium that you use. You can tell every kind of movie you'd ever want in animation, or everybody's just picking this one avenue. So we were driven so hard by, there's got to be a better story you can tell. And it was also driven by, at least by me, is I hated CG. I know that's weird to say, but I had not seen anything that I liked outside of the shorts that Pixar had done.
Well, because if you go back to those CG conferences, you had 400 films that were like cubes rotating in space to...
And so between those two, we were like, we knew so badly there was a better movie that could be made out there for really large reasons, and that got us going every day, and also just the chance to make a movie. We had no sense that we would ever get this chance again. We kind of felt like, well, before they find out, let's get this thing done, and that really, there was such a naive passion, and I know we've used the analogy before, but it really is apropos to the guys that put the man on the moon in NASA. They were just too young and stupid to know you can't do it, and that was exactly what sort of drove us at that time.
You said that you guys have a dream team, but it seems to me, and maybe to you guys as well, Pixar's had, and even before, an endless series of dream teams that continued working on various projects. Every subset of the company and where it came from was just a magical group of people getting together and solving problems and keep pushing it forward with the goal, the mantra, I suppose, of just making great entertainment. I mean, that's what various people have said to me from Pixar over the years, and to put your imagination on a screen.
I mean, it's never stable either. You're constantly morphing it on the micro and the macro level to maximize the people that you're working with and the chemistries that you start to see ignite between certain groups and stuff. You're always trying to maximize the potential of who you have.
There's always some crisis with each film, and the trick is actually to recognize when a crisis when it happens and not wait till late. But there are a few important principles we have, and one of them is that we shouldn't do anything unless we think we can make it be great. Now, we almost strayed from that. When we started Toy Story 2, Toy Story 2 was initially going to be a direct-to-video thing with a B team on it, because that was a model for making money. And we started down that path, and we caught ourselves on that, realizing that we were going to become schizophrenic, that it was bad for our souls to have one group that was going to be doing something, we just say, do a great job, and the other group saying, well, just make some money for us. Uh-huh. And so we stopped it in the middle, and we actually redid Toy Story 2 and remade it. It was a very painful experience to go through. But in the end, we learned a number of lessons, and one of them was that while we can't guarantee success, we can guarantee that we're only going to do something if we think we're going to do our very best and do a great job at it. And one of the things that attracted us to Brad in the first place, he worked at Iron, or he'd made Iron Giant, although we'd known Brad for many years. Was Brad, if you haven't guessed it, is passionate.
That's a polite way.
And basically, it's the passion and the desire that makes something great, which makes him different. He brought a different kind of sensibility. It was his film. It's the first one not written by Andrew Stanton that we did.
It's still good.
In fact, when Brad came in, can he write his own? Could he edit without having to? Basically, he could make a film without using the Dream Team because we've been so successful. Yeah. And
not only that, they were tired. They were like, oh, Jesus.
Brad was the best thing that could have happened to us at the time because we knew after a couple successes that the enemy was us and that our biggest fear was complacency now, that we would somehow think we had it figured out. And the best remedy for that is bringing Brad Bird on. Yeah, he'll shake things up.
Yeah, I'll take that company down in 2 seconds. Let's get the guy that just did the big bomb. That'll keep us from getting cocky.
No, but the truth is, we knew Brad and John especially, and so we really felt like he was way overdue to be set up for success. So.
That was nice. Well, I would like to stay and talk all day, but I think we should let them see if they have anything to say to you guys. Let's begin by I'd like to thank all of these guys for joining us. So there's two microphones. If you have a question, step up to one of the microphones. You get one question, and then you got to go to the back of the line. And we'll just do this for about 15 minutes or so, see where this goes. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Why don't we start over here?
I'll only get one question, huh? Okay, well, I won't ask then why capes are bad on superhero outfits.
Self-explanatory.
Yes, right. The question I do want to ask, which I think you are one of the best groups to answer, is about the war that's brewing between Silicon Valley and Hollywood over the technologies of making, the media technologies and the people who make them, and the media technologies and the people who use them. And there are efforts going forth both in Congress and other places to control how media technologies will be architected, whether they'll be locked up or whether they'll be open. And you guys sit well at the marriage. You're both a motion picture studio and a very impressive high-tech company. Do you have any special perspective on that question?
Brad, take it away.
Well, I can tell you my ignorant perspective. My ignorant perspective is that I think the goal is to find a way to give people the freedom that they want without ripping off the artist. And I think that Steve Jobs has been very successful with iTunes of doing something that is easily available, but also salutes the hard work of artists and doesn't make the model, if you went to a hardware store and just grabbed a couple of hammers and said, thanks, that's what it kind of feels like to an artist who works on something and then people do it for free. So I think that there are new ways to look at it. Speaking from a lover of movies, though, and the theatrical experience, I hope that doesn't go away, because I think that in our quest for 24-hour accessibility of everything under the sun, we diminish the value of certain experiences. And I like the fact that movies used to have lines, and that it used to be hard to get into a movie, and when you saw it, if you saw it in its first week of release, you saw it in a giant screen in an ornate palace, and it was a show. Now we have made it to where on opening day you can see a film on a big screen or a crappy screen or a screen that's of a bootleg on your computer this big. And to me it's diminishing the show experience. So that's my perspective. Ed has a more enlightened perspective. And Alvy too.
I'm glad Steve's on our side.
Yeah.
All right, let's thank you. Let's go over here.
Since you mentioned that there were a lot of hippies involved in the movement, were hippie drug experiences also important in the early part of hippie graphics?
Alvy, you want to take this one?
He doesn't remember.
Interesting you should mention that. I just finished a book by John Markoff called What the Dormouse Said. The subtitle is something like the influence of the counterculture on the shaping of the personal computer industry. And I suggest you read that for an answer and let us off the hook.
Okay, over here.
Hi, John Francis. In the days we're talking about, I was with a little company called Apollo Computer. And just a quick aside to Brad, it wasn't just cubes and logos spinning in space. We had weird blobby things growing as well.
Oh yeah, the weird blobby thing.
But you have this reputation for being a technology-driven company, and yet we saw an excerpt there from Andre and Wally B, and you didn't have a full technology chain in place there, right? That was still converted to film by the old-fashioned way of actually pointing a camera at screens and taking pictures of them.
Yeah, that's them doing it.
And yet somehow there we go. And yet, I recognize that camera. We used that one. Yeah.
An old Mitchell.
Yeah. And yet somehow, that gets lost. You somehow get labeled as technology as when there's a lot more to it than that. And do you see that still happening to you today, or?
What, can you ask that question succinctly?
Yeah.
What the Dormouse said. It's in there.
I think those drugs are kicking in now, right? I'm not sure how we'd feel that. Feel okay?
Well, for what it's worth, it's kind of not an answer, but one of the things that we did with Andre and Wally B was use a Cray supercomputer. Cray, their machines sold for several $1 million, and they thought, sure, Lucasfilm would want to buy one. And the salesman worked very hard, very nice guy named Ben Skerber worked very hard on Ed and me trying to get us to buy one. And part of the sales pitch was to allow us to get free time on a Cray to try to finish Andre and Wally B for SIGGRAPH. And our joy was that the motion blur in Andre and Wally B brought the Cray supercomputer to its knees before it could finish one of the frames. It didn't matter. It was so blurry that it didn't matter.
Although the lesson I remember from that was that we actually didn't finish the movie.
Right, we didn't finish it.
For SIGGRAPH. So the last third of the movie, it went into line drawing. And what was interesting to me was when I talked to people afterwards, and I sort of apologized for the fact that the last third of it went into line drawing, fully half the people I talked to didn't notice that.
It's a good sign.
Okay, that means something. It's what's happening there is more important than the actual visual image.
I remember getting a big kick out of some of the Easter eggs in the original Toy Story. I only remember 1.5. The kids' toolbox had Benford on it, and there was something about the license plate of the family car that was special that I'm not remembering. Are there other Easter eggs you guys are particularly pleased about?
A113 is in every one of our movies, and it comes from?
It comes from the classroom at Cal Arts where originally the character animation program was so small that all of our classes, life drawing, design, color, animation, all these different classes were in one classroom, and that was the classroom number. And in Family Dog, I kind of put it. It was a thing I did for Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories. I put it in Family Dog, and John liked that because he was in that same classroom, and so it started this trend of putting A113 in all the films.
There's a lot of inside jokes, like Eggman Movers is Ralph Eggleston's login name.
Binford is Tool
Binford
Company.
is from Tim Allen's Home Improvement.
The books on the shelves
Books
are
on
from
the
the
shelves
shorts.
Yeah, the names of all our shorts.
Yeah.
I can get really deep with some things that are.
Andy is wearing Andrew's shorts in the film.
That's John's TV. It's John Lasseter's television set.
Yep.
Futura or something like that.
And there's lots.
Over here.
You talked some about how photorealism was too much for a story like Nemo, where it was really a fantasy and not a realistic image the story was not of a realistic image. Can you talk some about whether or not there is a place in film for photorealistic computer animation?
Well, there already is for live-action hybrid movies, and the Lord of the Rings and any of those kind of movies. Or, as a matter of fact, you're seeing more effects in movies than you know, even when you're just seeing what you think is a standard drama.
Need I mention Star Wars again?
Well, yeah, but it's also, it's not only things where a computer digital creation has to share screen space with a live action person. It's also things like stunts. How is Tom Cruise jumping off that subway train and not dying?
Right.
And yet it's his face. You see him. It's Tom Cruise. It's in movies all the time when you guys don't know it a lot of the time.
But in our world, it's only because of creative choice. We have not come up with a story that's asked us to replicate photorealism to that degree. There's nothing that we've felt has come up where we think that's what's needed.
We're in fact using the same render. I mean, we wrote RenderMan, which we use obviously in our movies, and that's what they're using at ILM and at Weta and so forth. So it's the same render. It's artistic choice.
It becomes harder and harder to make the distinction between animation and live action. If you look at films like Sin City, or where they're actually in that blurry zone between the two. But every frame is now being shot digitally in live-action films, and often
but it's also, when we were doing our first film that focused exclusively on human characters, everybody was going, "Oh, I don't know, it can't work, blah blah blah," and it's because of
Final Fantasy.
Sorry. Little capture. But anyway, we chose not to be deliberately real. I mean, our lead character, Bob's hands are about twice as big as his feet. It's very caricatured reality in one sense, that they don't look real, but we tried very hard to make the characters have a lot of weight and things that a lot of animated films don't have. So when they impact something or when they walk, we put extra care into making them feel like they weighed a certain amount. If you see a lot of animated films, big characters will make lightning fast movements, but it won't feel like the bulk is moving that fast because they flit around like they weigh 2 ounces. And to me, that kills the believability. So I think the key word is believability, not realism, but do you believe it? Yep. And when I see a lot of my friends come out of Nemo and they go, "Wow, that was so real." And these are cartoons. They're cartoons, but they believed it. So that their word for believable is real.
Yeah.
I have a question for Brad. Were you a big fan of the movie Kronos, the 50s movie Kronos?
No. I'm
No?
sorry, I'm disappointing you, I can tell. Big fan. I know all of the things you're talking about. I'm sorry, no, that was...
Really?
We just wanted a name in the cave, you mean? Yeah. It was just kind of an allusion to a Greek thing. Well, you know,
really?
all that stuff, yeah.
It's not the movie.
No, unfortunately, damn.
You're going to go watch it now, aren't you?
Yeah, I have to look at it.
Like the backstory on the villain, he's describing a movie, but saying it's just like the movie, but
he's talking about
just
all
movies
kinds
in general.
of movies, yeah. Well,
Interesting.
See, I'm
all
not
right.
as deep as you thought.
That's cool. Thanks.
Sorry.
You said that story is central, and I wanted to know from Andrew, Brad, and Ed, who has influenced you most in storytelling, and what are the institutions and training that you had before?
God, it's a long list.
Maybe the key ones for each one of you.
Go ahead, do it like that rock song. It
sounds stereotypical, but I am a huge fan of David Lean, and of the people that really were at the peak of his career.
Robert Bolt.
Robert Bolt was probably, to me, the best compliment with a director and a writer that I could ever imagine in screen, and it's still hard. At best, I see people that I think match it. So I honestly fall back to him a lot. In my sort of obscure times, I'm a David Mamet fan as well, just because of his economy. I mean, he takes it almost to a fault, but it's really telling.
Screenwriters, or is that what you're or directors, or both?
Anything.
My directors list would go on. You guys would leave, and they'd start turning out the lights, and it would be bad. But everybody that he's mentioned: Hitchcock, Disney, John Hubley, Chaplin, Howard Hawks, blah, 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 you know, too many, way too many. Fellini, Kurosawa, blah, blah, blah. For film writers, I love Robert Towne. I love Robert Riskin. I love Billy Wilder, Preston Sturges. You know, I think Coppola is a great screenwriter that's underrated. You know, it goes on and on. There's so many.
Ditto.
All right, over here.
This is more of a commentary on Brad. I'm an animation teacher, and I was using, for all my classes, I was using Family Dog as a great example, especially the scene where you're pouring out the can. That's why students should use a lot of it in-betweens. They always avoid in-betweens, and that's a great case of why you should use it, because it wouldn't have been funny if they did it fast.
Well, I think that there is a general feeling now in movies. It's kind of a nervous, frantic, it's like, it's almost like the filmmakers / executives have flop sweat. And you feel that they're worried that the audience, it's almost like the audience has a remote and they're going to change the channel. So we got to throw another loud sound effect, and we got to have another cut. And even if it's a dialogue scene between two people, we got to have a cut every 2 seconds, and maybe lots of camera movement that's kind of nervous and hip and pseudo, you know. And there's this, it's like this panic. It's like a comedian that you start to see their upper lip get wet and they're, you know. And I hate that. And a lot of the films that I love take their time and let moments breathe, and so that when you have a moment that's intense or you go into an action scene, you're coming out of something quieter. So I tried to, he's describing, there's a scene in Family Dog where the dog keeps asking to be fed, and finally the woman opens a can, and the dog is really anticipating it, but this thing comes out really slowly in the shape of the can, almost like, well, you don't want to know, but it's like... And as it keeps coming out, the dog starts losing enthusiasm for it. But at one point it stops, and she has to kind of shake it, blah, 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 you know, to get it to go again. But anyway, it's all about slowing down, and I think that that's a thing that's missing from modern comedy, and I think that I love it. I love when people draw something out. You know, it's delicious to me. And in terms of suspense, there are very few guys that follow in the footsteps of Spielberg, where, you know, if the monster is coming, he'll tease out that moment. You know, everybody cites, you know, people try to imitate Spielberg by doing the dinosaur chasing the car, but nobody emulates the shot of the cup. You know, the cup with the little water rippling. That's the part that separates Spielberg from everybody else, and that's all about the tease. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all about dropping a bra strap, but not just getting naked, you know. So anyway.
How do you follow that? Okay.
This is primarily for Brad and Andrew. I'm really interested in your story development process. I mean, all of the pictures, all of the movies I've seen from Pixar have this very rich characterization and sort of backstory, and there's a lot in it. And I have a feeling, particularly with Brad's The Incredibles, that it was something that rattled around for you for a long time, and was kind of part of who you were.
Yeah, it did. But you know, you make... Even though it was a superhero story, I had connections with things that were going on in my life. But you know, that's one film, and Andrew's been there for the development of 5, and so he's really the guy that I mean, he's seen every story under the sun, and so,
well, thank God they take 4 years to make, because it's all about rewrite. I don't think we write better than anybody else. I don't think we come up with answers faster than anybody else. It's just that we, thank God, work at a place where they don't give up on us after our 15th try and it's still not working. They have the patience to let us try and get it back up on the bike again in the hopes that the 16th try will get it. And And I've sort of said this before to Ed. I said, listen, I won't get it right the first time, but I'll get it wrong really soon, really quickly, so that we can get as close to that, as early as we can. We get to that 16th try and find the answer. So it's nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. I don't know how else it is. And frankly, it's that combined with probably the healthiest group of people I could ever be with that just don't let you get away with anything. They're very honest, but in the most constructive way, so that it hurts. They're not going to hide from you. They say it doesn't work, and this is why I think it doesn't work. But it doesn't at all mean they have lost any faith in that you will get it. And so it's a great combination.
Yeah, there's a great story about what Andrew is saying, about getting it wrong quickly. Gower Champion, who was a director, and directed a lot of musicals in the late 50s and early 60s. I mean, actually went back to the 30s. But anyway, he was directing this musical, and he came into the theater. And the choreographer, they were rehearsing this musical, and the choreographer was just sitting there in about 3 rows back, just going like this. And there was a whole cast of dancers up on the stage just standing, looking at the choreographer, waiting. And Champion came in and said, "What's going on? What's going on?" And the guy said, I just don't know what to do." And he said, "Well, do something so we can change it." And that's the key. Is momentum. In my mind, a creative project is a shark, and do not let it die. Just go forward and use that time to make as many mistakes as you can. If you wait till you have the answer, you will probably, first of all, not have the answer, and you will have wasted all the time to find the real answer.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
So shark.
We've seen a real push with the performance and the acting of digital characters in the last couple movies. And my question is, how do you see this being pushed even further? And what advice would you give to the next generation of filmmakers for creating this kind of performance?
It has everything to do with your animators. Your animators are your actors. So your animation is only going to be as good as the animator that you hired. So same way you can hire Orlando Bloom in one movie and it doesn't give you what Russell Crowe gave you in another. It's exactly the same thing. It really comes down to people. People keep wanting, because they're so seduced by the technology, to think that somehow the technology gave the performance. No, Pixar got smarter than other people and got animators in there quicker. And then we also started, because we were putting out quality products, got some of the better animators quicker than others. And it just comes down to really great, talented people.
But I think also there's a tendency with animators to get more and more insulated and only look at other animation. Because animation is readily available, and you can buy all these films on DVD now. I mean, a kid starting out now can buy all these films on DVD, single frame through them, go into the extra features, hear the animators talking about it. And the tendency is, I mean, they can learn technical skills very quickly now. The problem is that they're only referencing other people's points of view.
So it's like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox.
Of a Xerox of a Xerox. And, when in hand-drawn animation, I would look at a scene, and I would know cold every place that they got it. Oh, they're using that turn from that Frank Thomas scene in Sleeping Beauty, and that walk is from Milk Call in Jungle Book, and there's a head bob there from Ollie Johnson in Aristocats. And it was cobbled together, but it wasn't. It was kind of like, it lives. But the thing is that the guys who invented that stuff didn't have anything to look at. So where did they go to figure it out? They looked at their Uncle Lou. They looked at films. They looked at paintings. They drew from animals and their own observations. And so life was being brought into animation, and it felt fresh. So I really try to urge my animators, and this is something that Pixar does all the time as well, to pull from life, pull from themselves, and pull from things that they've observed. And don't just look at animation, because it's kind of like eating your own tail.
The thing that fascinates me about working at Pixar, I've been there for 15 years now, and we rarely reference other animated pictures. And we rarely talk about other animated pictures. If anything, I'm always hearing just about movies in general, old or new, and performances, whether they're theatrical or whether they're scenes from books. It's a much larger scope that everybody sort of gets their inspiration from, and I think it's so much healthier to do that.
And people on the crew and weird little gestures. I remember there was this kid that I knew growing up that when he got excited he'd go, and you'd start talking about something and he'd just start going. And I thought that was really weird and cool. So when I had this crook in Family Dog, I said, have him go like this they kidnap this guy and have him on the floor. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know? And that's the kind of stuff you want to pull. Everybody in this room has a different set of experiences.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that makes animation interesting.
Do you think that people learning computer animation should should they do traditional animation?
Whenever I get asked that, I say, go take sculpture classes, go see theater, go watch movies, go read books, go to the source. Don't reference other animation.
But drawing is good, though.
Drawing.
Yeah.
Good to draw. I don't remember where we were. I'm going to go over here.
As a student aspiring to work in an art department of like a company like yours, I'm trying to perfect my drawing skills and also trying to learn the technology as well. And I wanted to know what you would suggest, how I should divvy up my time in trying to perfect both those worlds.
Well, Ed recently went to Cal Arts because a terrible thing that's happening is there's this talk that I can't stand, which is 2D is dead, the computer replaces all. And it's like, no, it isn't dead any more than, photography killed off drawing or painting, And so the problem is a lot of these schools are closing down all their teaching of hand drawing in favor of bringing in computers. Now, I'm as pro-computer as anybody. I just, made a film that way and I love it. I think they're great tools. But I don't think they're the only tools.
It's a horrible misconception because a couple of the studios which shall remain unnamed have decided that the reason they failed is because the audience has lost their taste for 2D and they want 3D. It's a very poor excuse for why they forgot how to tell stories. But the unfortunate consequence of this is the schools think the only way to teach students is to teach them how to use alias. Now that is not. It's fine to be able to learn how to animate and use the tools. I'm not knocking that, but it's now a substitute for learning art and learning how to see. And one of the great things about drawing and 2D drawing is that you're training yourself to observe and see what's happening. It is the best training, and almost all of our great animators were trained in 2D. It's still the best training ground.
One of the great connections I had with John coming up was I was all nervous because I'm not a great draftsman. Everybody I went to school drew much better than I could, and I always sort of was embarrassed of that fact. And then I went up and started working with John. And
if you saw his drawings, you'd think they were good.
Yeah. And John had the same thing. He was probably the least talented in the draftsmanship area than the rest of his classmates. And he said CG was perfect for him because what he didn't have a problem was knowing what he wanted to see. And what he had a great skill at was communication. I don't know if you've ever played Pictionary. Pictionary is where you do charades, and the people that can draw that play that are the worst people. Don't have them on your team. Because they sit there and they try to render it just right, and they correct it, and they erase it. The people that can't draw are sometimes the best because they go straight for what communicates. I'll draw a circle, I'll do two dots right here. Oh, it's whatever. It's Eiffel Tower, it's whatever. And I'm amazed at how I've actually gotten worse at my draftsmanship skills as I've worked at Pixar, but I draw every day, and what I realized I was very good at was communication, that I knew what would tell something to somebody. If you saw this way, and if you saw it here and you staged it this way, bam, you'll know exactly what's happening. And it's a completely separate skill, although you can enhance it the better you can draw. But I don't think I would have ever realized that and maximized that had I not just kept with the drawing, even though I knew I was never going to be the guy that anybody was going to come to for my drawing. So I agree with Ed, basically. It's a long story. It's a tremendous asset to always put pencil to paper, even if it's just for your own private use. So don't drop that no matter how much. And frankly, software is going to always change. The big thing I learned at Pixar, because I never touched a computer before I went up there. And John's big thing at the time was, you're making software for people that have to understand software. You should make software based on how whoever's going to use it thinks. So you should make tools that exactly how an animator thinks. And Pete Doctor and I were proof. We sat down, and within 2 to 3 months, we were using software, and we'd never touched a computer. It's because it was designed for the way we already thought as animators. So if the software is done right, you'll have no problem. So spend most of your time trying to enhance your animation skills. That has nothing to do with what medium you use it in. That's your observation skills, your timing skills, your entertainment skills. Those are the things that, as technology continues to change, you're not going to lose your job because you can keep moving those skills over to whatever the new platform is. So.
Awesome, thanks.
We're going to take 2 more questions, one from each side.
Okay. Since that LSD question went into the memory hole, can I try one more? I was wondering about the history of Pixar, if there are any books. The one that I'm familiar with is The Second Coming of Steve Jobs, and whether that book's an accurate reflection of...
This is a great... Did you set this up?
I didn't ask him to do that.
Read his book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a great job, I think, of writing the history.
This will be the history of the group up until Pixar starts, and then his book ends.
Yeah, mine takes you to the creation, really, when they took off to become Pixar. A lot of work happened in that time, and it's a lot of the passions over decades, but it sort of sets the stage for the story of Pixar. But I think it tells you a lot about them.
Yeah, well, we're trying to make up a better mythology going forward.
But there's a book coming out next year?
Yeah, next year, because this year is our 20th anniversary.
Can you believe that? 20 years of Pixar?
So there'll be a book next year.
My book's October, Think of that for Christmas, Last question.
Yes. Brad, since you've done a major film in 2D and one in 3D, and granting that they are media, not genres, I guess I'm a little curious if you think that Iron Giant or The Incredibles would have turned out differently, or how they would have turned out differently if they had been done with a different number of dimensions.
The main dimension is marketing, as far as marketing is good. That's a good I think that there were a lot of tools available at Pixar, besides just having an amazing group of talent there that could realize anything that you could think of. I love being able to move the camera in space. I love being able to have the control over lighting, and I love being able to have really subtle facial controls, which are difficult in hand-drawn animation. That said, Incredibles was originally planned as a 2D film. In fact, the drawing, the front of the Art of the Incredibles book was from my pitch for it as a 2D film. And the designs didn't really change. They stayed the same. I think that right now, for better or for worse, the press and anybody that has money believes the notion that it's CG that makes a film special. So I think that any hand-drawn film would have a bit of a challenge now outside of Japan. Fortunately, I hope this blows over and that we're at a point 5 years from now where clay can coexist with stop motion, which coexists with hand-drawn, which coexists with CG, and that there are ways to blend all of them that we haven't even imagined yet.
Some independent guy's going to make a kick-ass 2D film in the next couple of years, and suddenly it's going to be back.
It's going to be the hip, cool, new thing. What's old is new again.
I guess I just sort of wondered if Iron Giant would have worked given that its sort of 50s theme and so the style of animation, harkening back to that, if that would have worked.
I think Iron Giant would have worked if they'd sold it. They were closing the division down as we were making it. I don't think it would have been a Lion King size hit, but I think it would have done all right. I think it would have made money for the company. But they were closing down the division as we were making the film, and that was kind of like being on the Titanic, but no, not all bad, because we had full run of the place. We were all going to be dead in the ocean in 2 hours, but we could go up to first class and have the brandy, and these 2 hours are going to be sweet. And, we made a joke that they forgot to turn off the power, so we made a movie, But when it got finally done enough for them to have test scores, our test scores were the highest they'd had in 15 years. If people saw the movie, they liked it. The problem is we couldn't get anybody to like the movie before they'd seen it, because they thought it was a Japanese film. What is this? Iron Giant, and nobody came. So it's getting a little more popular every year, but I kind of like that it's hand-drawn. And we did use the computer for the giant. I don't, whether it would have been a bigger success if it was CG, probably because they would have felt more confident in it. But that comes back to marketing again.
Thank you.
It's kind of a downer last